Okay, before we go back to where we left off last time, tomorrow and the next day, there's no Tachnun, because it's what's called Purim Katan, the mini Purim. If it would be a regular year, Purim would be tonight. But because there's two Adars, there's a whole discussion in the Gemara, when is Purim? The first Adar, the second Adar, a whole discussion in the Gemara. The halacha is that Purim is in the second Adar. But nevertheless, in the first month of Adar, especially because there are opinions that say that's when you would keep Purim, so it's called Purim Katan, and Shushan Purim Katan. So it's an interesting, not only don't you say Tachnun, like you're not allowed to make eulogies and things like that, it's forbidden to fast tomorrow and the next day, but the bottom line, as far as we're concerned, practically speaking, that there's no Tachnun in the next 2 days, so therefore to Mincha today we also didn't say it. By the way, I just want to mention, if you didn't do Kiddush Levana tonight, yes, if you didn't do Kiddush Levana, there's a nice Levana outside, you should do it tonight. Okay, let's get back.
One question about, so in the time that they used to do Kiddush by the Levana, deciding to add a month, if it was after Purim, after Yudali, and they decide, let's say on Tav, to add another month, so they would do Purim twice?
No, they knew they had a pretty good idea if they would have to do it or not. Okay. Last time we were discussing that if somebody cooks meat in a pot, so then the pot becomes meat because the taste of the meat becomes absorbed within the walls of the pot. But it's only a fresh taste we are learning for 24 hours. After 24 hours, then it's what's called Neisen Tam Lebgam, it's a blemished taste, and therefore it wouldn't be a problem b'diavad, which means if somebody by mistake cooked milk in a meat pot that wasn't used for 24 hours and is clean, so then the milk you'd be allowed to eat, or the cheese, whatever you're making of dairy you're allowed to eat. The pot you would need to kasher.
Does that apply to trade?
What?
Does that apply to trade?
Technically, again, but that's only after the fact. You're not allowed to cook in such a pot. But if somebody by mistake thought a pot was kosher, and it ended up not being kosher, and it was treif, and it wasn't used for 24 hours, the same din would buy. The food would be kosher. You'd be allowed to eat the food. Now, it's a very interesting halacha. What happens if you don't know if it was used in 24 hours or not? You just don't know. Some of you are in somebody else's house and people don't remember if this particular spoon, fork, pot was used within 24 hours. So the halacha is, Stam Kalim Eina Ben Yaimi. Most Kalim, that means if you don't know, we assume that the pot was not used for 24 hours. In other words, only if you know for sure the pot was used within 24 hours that it would be a problem. But here, let's give an interesting scenario. Somebody had a meat pot. Okay, after 24 hours, they cooked milk in the pot. So the milk is kosher because the pot wasn't used for 24 hours. But that day, somebody cooked meat again in that pot. Now remember, it's a meat pot, wasn't used for 24 hours. Now, by mistake, somebody cooked milk in it. So we said the milk is kosher because it's after 24 hours. The pot needs to be kosher. But what happens if within that same day somebody didn't realize somebody cooked milk in it? And then they cooked meat again in that pot. So the din is that meat would be treif. Why? Because he just cooked milk in that pot. The milk is a fresh taste. It's within 24 hours. So technically, the pot is now a milk pot, right? It's technically a milk pot, and you cook meat within 24 hours of the milk pot, so the meat would be treif. Of course, you have to kasher the pot anyway. That's not a question. But you can have a scenario: a guy will cook meat in a meat pot, and it would be treif. I mean, everything's kosher, but a meat pot, a guy. Where do you have a case? It's called heichatim. So where do you find a scenario that you have a meat pot, you cook meat in that pot, and the pot would still be treif? The answer is that somebody in between cooked milk or cheese in that pot within 24 hours. So even though you're cooking meat in a meat pot, but halachically it's not really a meat pot, it's a milk pot. And therefore, the food would be treif, and then you'd have to kasher the pot also. Now, what happens if somebody takes a spoon, let's say you're cooking a meat cholent, okay, or chicken soup. Somebody takes a milk spoon, a milchik spoon, and mixes the pot. So then the other day we discussed that because we don't know how much milk, if this is the spoon, you don't know how much milk was absorbed in the spoon. So therefore we need to count as if the whole spoon was dairy. Because we don't know how much milk was absorbed. Right? That's what we learned the other day. So now you have a big cholent or chicken soup. Somebody takes a dairy spoon and now stirs the cholent or the chicken soup. So if that spoon was not used for 24 hours before you mixed it, so then the cholent is good, the cholent pot is good, because it's a blemished taste of milk going into the pot. So therefore the pot's good. But what happens if it was used that day for hot milk? So then the din is, again, because we don't know how much was absorbed within it, we have to look at the whole spoon is dairy. So now if you have a big pot of chicken soup and you stir the pot and there's 60 times, and you have 60 times in the chicken soup against the spoon, it's kosher. And now you have to figure, line up 60 spoons in the amount of the chicken soup, because if you could have half a pot, whole pot, whatever, you have to figure it, estimate that 60 spoons, this size, would be able to fit into the pot, and you'd have more chicken soup than the spoon, 60 times the amount. Then again, the chicken would be kosher. The spoon obviously is treif because it has chicken and meat in it, so that would need to be kosher. But the cholent and the chicken soup would be fine. What happens if there's no shishim? You don't have 60 times the amount, and the spoon was used that day for hot milchiks. Then the din is, the chicken soup is treif, or the cholent is treif, the pot is treif, and the spoon is treif. And if it's a pot which is not kasherable, say it's china or earthenware material, then you have to throw it out.
The spoon needs to be kosher too, obviously, right?
The spoon for sure needs to be kosher. Now, if the spoon is a ceramic spoon, which I don't know if I've seen it yet, then you have to throw it out because ceramic cannot be kosher.
Teflon,
Anything which is coated cannot be koshered because the coating doesn't allow the koshering process for everything to spit out from the inside of the pot.
Can't we say that the inside of the thing never became treif then?
It did. It goes in, but it doesn't come out properly.
What about glaze? I think it's a off topic, glaze ceramic. Is that glass halachically?
Glaze ceramic is ceramic.
If it's glaze and it's coming off of glass.
Yeah. In fact, somebody called me an interesting question right before I came here. They moved and they're setting up the kitchen, and they bought a new frying pan from the store or whatever. And they saw that when they unwrapped it to table it in the mikveh, it wasn't wrapped like something brand new. Okay? Sometimes, people return things, and then the store just repackages it and sell it. So the question is, not only that, they saw the pot itself was good, but like at the bottom of the pot, they saw it was like scraped a little bit. It looks like it was used, but the question maybe not. Maybe it was on the shelf, maybe whatever. So they asked me, what do you do? Okay. So I said, first it's interesting, al pidin, it says that if somebody buys something from a store, and you're not buying it a used item, you're buying it officially as a new item, halachically you can assume that it's new. That's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, you can assume it's new. Now obviously if you see it's not new, then it's a different story. So she said, I don't know if I can give it back, I don't remember where I bought it. I said, is it coated? Is the frying pan coated? She said, no. So I said, why don't you just kosher it? It's plain stainless steel. Just kasher it in boiling hot water. That's it. You don't even need libun on it. You boiling hot water, you kasher it. So what do you have to go crazy? Just, kasher in boiling hot water and it's fine. Okay, next. Okay, we learned that. Okay, now then we learned. Okay, the spoon is treif. If the spoon wasn't used for 24 hours, everything's kosher. Okay, now, this also happens a lot. What happens if somebody cooks parve and noodles, okay? Somebody cooks parve and noodles in a meat pot, okay? And somebody sticks into the pot a dairy spoon that was used that day. Now, again, because now you have like this. The pot was used within 24 hours. The spoon was used within 24 hours. Okay? So even though what you're cooking in the pot is parve, right? But the problem is, there's a fresh taste of the milk from the pot, or fleishiks, from the pot into the meat, into the parve, into the noodles. And then you have a fresh taste from the spoon of the milk also into the noodles. So then the problem is, it's all going to be treif. Unless if you have 60 times the amount. But in other words, let's say you have, very simple, you have a fleishik pot that was used within 24 hours. It was used within 24 hours. And you're cooking noodles in it. Okay? Now I take a milchik spoon that was also used within 24 hours, and I mix the noodles. So now you have fresh taste of meat and milk together in the noodles. So the only way it would be good if it's batel b'shishim. If it's 60 times the amount of the spoon or the pot, which is not going to happen too often.
To the noodles or to the mixture of water plus noodles?
Everything together adds up.
Okay, so noodles and water is the same halacha as just water?
Yeah, or just noodles. In other words, it's against everything in the pot.
Right.
But not with the
You
side.
can't say I'll strain the water and keep the noodles.
No, it's all one thing.
Right.
It's all one chalent. Water, noodles.
You can't say, well, the water's trafe, so anything.
Now, what happens if, let's say you cook in a meat pot, something parve, I'm sorry, a milk pot, doesn't matter. A milk pot, you cook something parve, right? Cook something parve. And then you stick in a milk spoon that wasn't used for 24 hours. That wasn't used for 24 hours. So then, the pot and the noodles are all good because the spoon wasn't used for 24 hours. Huh? The pot is fleishik. You cook parve in it. The pot was not used for 24 hours. Right. Now, even if it was used for 24 okay, doesn't go either way. And the spoon was not used for 24 hours. The meat pot was used within 24 hours. Yes? And the spoon was not used for 24 hours.
And the food is parve.
The food is parve, but it's cooked in a meat pot that was used that day for meat.
Correct.
So let's analyze it step by step. These noodles are meat because the taste of meat, fresh tasted meat, because it was used within 24 hours. So fresh tasted meat comes out into the noodles. So now the noodles are fleishik. Correct? Now if I stick in a milchik spoon, but the spoon wasn't used for 24 hours, so the noodles are good, the pot's good because it's a blemished taste of milk. But the spoon I need to kosher.
You need to kosher it even though the food is still fine, huh?
Yep. Well, you have that case also. If you cook, if you had a pot that was used, we learned that case many times before. You have a pot that wasn't used for 24 hours, yeah, and then you stick in something that was used for 24 hours, within 24 hours. Let's say you're cooking meat in a pot, okay, it was used, or parve in a pot, it was used for 24 hours, within 24 hours, right? And then you take a spoon that wasn't ben yaimei. This case really is the same case we learned before. Okay, this is all good. But sometimes if the pot was used within 24 hours.
I guess I understand why you have to catch with milk and spoon. If the contents of the pot are fine, meaning it didn't do anything technically, right? So ain't been yet a milk and spoon.
Yeah, but it became fleshik from the meat that's from the parve, but it's still meat now in the noodles because it was a fresh taste in it.
So obviously it's not about the shishim. We're not talking about that. We're saying
No, there's no bittul b'shishim.
right. We're talking
Huh?
about
Bottom decision doesn't work the other way for this spoon.
It would, but it's not bittul b'shishim.
but if it was, you wouldn't even have to catch the spoon if it was the bottom of shishim, would you?
If the spoon is bittul,
If you took a milk and spoon
yeah.
and you stirred a massive commercial pot, it's 100% the bottom of shishim, right?
No, but so the food's kosher, but the spoon is treif.
The spoon becomes a trade right?
Because now you have,
But even if it's Ada Ben Yema, no.
yeah, if the spoon's ain't a ben yaimi, you still have meat in it.
So now it's a fleshik spoon.
Yeah, but because you have milchiks in it also, now it's fleshik, so you have to kasher it. No,
Oh, you're saying right.
lechatchila you need to kasher it.
But technically, if 24 hours pass, right? You have this milking spoon. Technically, it's hard.
Yeah, but not, that's only b'diavad, not lechatchila. Lechatchila you have to kasher it.
One
Okay.
time Ramesh's wife walked in,
If you-
and he had a yogurt, and he was eating it with a fleshik spoon. She's like, "What are you doing? The fleshik spoon?" He said, "No, it's cold." She's like, "You and your